Hello students. So in this video we are going to learn about circle and the terms related to it. So here is circle. So how we define circle? So circle is a set of points which are equidistant from the fixed point. So here we can see here, so this white color point what we can see, so that we call it as a fixed point, and here all the points what you can see, so these points are at equidistant from this fixed point. And so when you are joining all these points, so here you can observe when I am joining all these points, so here a circle is formed. So this we call it as circle. Now this fixed point which is equidistant from the all points on the circle, so that we call it as the center of the circle. So here in this, if you observe, so from the center of the circle to any point on the circle, so here you can see from the center of the circle, so this is the center of the circle, and from the center of the circle to any point on the circle what we can see, so that we call it as the radius of the circle. So in this you can observe the radius of the circle. So from the distance from any point on the circle to the center of the circle, so this distance we call it as radius. So here the radius of the circle is fixed. Whatever that points you take on the circle from the center, so the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the circle will be same. So here if you observe, so the distance will be same. This point if you take, here if you take, so here, so whatever the circle on the points you take, you go on taking, so the distance will be fixed from the center of the circle to any point on the circle, and this fixed distance we call it as the radius of the circle. And here radius of the circle and diameter of the circle you can study here. So diameter is, this is twice the radius. So radius, if you add 2 times you will get the diameter, and the line which passes from any point on the circle to the, from the center of the circle, this we call it as the diameter. And here you can observe in this video, here this line what is formed, so from this point on the circle it is passing through the center of the circle and touches the other point of the circle, and this point we call it as the diameter of the circle, and this diameter is twice the radius. So diameter is 2 times of the radius, and here you can observe the distance between these 2 points is equal to the distance between these 2 points, and the distance between these 2 blue colored points, so that we call it as diameter, and this diameter is twice the radius of the circle. Then the next point we are having chord. So here chord of the circle means any line which passes, which is any line segment whose endpoints lies on the circle. So here you can observe this is a line segment that is formed, and the endpoints of this line segment falls on the circle. So we can say that chord diameter is the longest chord of the circle. Apart from diameter, how many chords a circle can have? So a circle can have infinite number of chords, and here you can see in this, a chord is formed like this. So this line we call it as the chord. So this point, from a line joining from this point to this point on the circle, so this point we call it as chord of the circle. And the chord of the circle we can have here, you can see this is also a chord of a circle, and here you can observe this is also a chord of a circle. So you can say here any line which is, whose endpoints lie on the circle points, that we call it as chord of the circle. And here one more thing you can observe, when you are studying about the chord which is passing from the center of the circle, that becomes the diameter of the circle. So now if you observe here, this is again the line segments endpoints are lying on the circle, but this is passing through the center of the circle. So here we can say that this line is again chord of the circle and also the diameter of the circle. So what is the relation we are having? Chord, it is the line segment whose endpoints lie on the circle, and one more thing what we can say, this is the part of the circle where the diameter is the longest chord of the circle. Then the next part we are having secant. So how we can define the secant? So here secant is a line which touches the circle at 2 distinct points, so that we call it as tangent. So here what you can observe, a line, this line is passing from this point to here and it is crossing the circle, and here it touches the circle at two different points. This line is touching the circle at two different points, and this line we call it as secant. Secant is a line which touches the circle at two different points. It's a line which touches the circle at two different points. We call it as the secant. So here you can observe this is the secant and it touches the circle at two different points. Then one more thing we are having, this tangent. So what is tangent here? So tangent is a line which touches the circle at only one point. So here you can observe in this point. So here if you take this line is touching the circle at exactly one point. So here if you observe, this touches the circle at only one point, and we can say that this is the tangent drawn to the circle. So tangent touches the circle at only one point. Now one more thing we are having, the arc. So what is an arc of a circle? Arc is any part of the circle. We call it as arc. So you can say, observe here this yellow color points. All points if you observe, that is also one kind of arc. And all the blue color dots if you observe, that is also one color. That is one part of the circle, and that is also we call it as arc of the circle. Now again what we have, this blue colored points all forms the semicircle and yellow colored points also forms the semicircle. So if you take any circle, so there if you divide that circle into two equal parts, then we get the semicircle. Half of the circle we call it as semicircle. And in this small part of that we call, if you take that, we call it as the minor arc, and the major part of the circle if you take it, that we call it as major arc and minor arc. Then next one we are having sector. So sector is the region covered between a pair of radii and the arc of a circle. So that we call it as sector. So here you can observe in this, here you can see this is one radius and this is one radius we are having, and the area enclosed between these two radii and an arc, that we call it as sector. Sector is the area enclosed between, the region enclosed between two radii and an arc of a circle. So that we call it as sector. And one more sector how you can get here. So this you can observe here. This is again one more sector we are getting. It is the enclosed between two radii and an arc of the circle. So that we call it as sector. And here two radii and small arc we are having. So this we call it as minor sector. And this is again two radii with the bigger arc we are having. So this part we call it as major sector. So major sector and minor sector we are having. Now next, the last part we will study. So that we call it as the segment. Now what is the segment? Segment is the area or the region enclosed between a chord and an arc, that we call it as segment. Now what we have got here? Chord and an arc. The area enclosed between this chord and an arc. So this part we call it as segment. Here children, what we can see? This is the smaller arc we are having, and smaller arc with the chord. This we call it as the minor segment, and chord enclosed with the major arc we call it as major segment. So these are the parts of the circle. So what we have studied in this video: circle, center of the circle, radius, diameter, chord, secant, tangent, major arc and minor arc, semicircle, sector, major sector and minor sector, segment, major segment and minor segment. Thank you.